we head back in '07, Capcom released Resident Evil: The Umbrella Chronicles for the Nintendo Wii. This was an on-rails zombie shooter that explored Resident Evil's deep history, including Resident Evil 1, 0, and yes, Nemesis. A few years later, a sequel to the successful predecessor, Darkside takes place in 2002 in South America, as both familiar faces, Leon S. Kennedy and Jack Krauser, venture through the hot and humid climates of the lower hemisphere. There, our government operatives are on the search for a Javier Hidalgo, who's an ex-drug lord having ties to the global pharmaceutical enterprise known as, what else? Umbrella.
Time to kick some ass.
Not much as a surprise for the audience, Leon and Krauser discover an outbreak and fight amidst its vicious spread.
One hell of a mess we're in.
They're fortunately on the right trail, as some of the zombies have a sacred snake indentation, meaning that these once human inhabitants worked for a Javier Hidalgo.
The sacred snakes.
Now they must delve deeper into the infection once more, and in their search they find a lead for a woman named Manuela, who may be responsible for this recent virus spill. Darkside Chronicles revolves around the new South America mission, Resident Evil 2, and Code Veronica. As you progress through the game, you aren't given the freedom to start playing one story or the other, as you will have to unlock the chapters in a specific order. You can always replay previous missions, of course, but with this very strict linear presentation, the developers should have developed the story mode without loading back to the menu screen, just to select the next mission.
Great.
Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica are considered shattered memories, in which Leon laments on both events to explain his connection among these separate incidents during his assignment in the South. Most of Darkside Chronicles is about the shattered memories, recreating nearly the same events experienced years back, with the exception of a more personal experience. Umbrella Chronicles gave the player the opportunity to play through all the epic moments that each game was entitled to. While it felt like you were playing through the entire game and only in on-rails shooter form, the pacing and the length of each scenario was just right. In contrast, with Darkside Chronicles, a third of the game was playing through Resident Evil 2 or Code Veronica, and it simply begins to drag. Basically, it feels like the Spark Notes to the full book. Essentially, you play all you need to play from earlier games, but in many areas, this feels pointless or simply tedious to do.
How dare you destroy my world?
Each quote-unquote shattered memory is played from beginning to end. However, some of the memorable events from the games, like fighting the mutated William Birkin or meeting certain side characters, are revamped to quicken the pace of the story. You may not even bump into certain people the way it was intentionally, or some may even meet their demise much earlier.
Oh God.
The lighting is what makes Darkside Chronicles exceptional, even though the game caters massive blemishes here and there. Up close, textures can be muddy or jagged along the edges, and the frame rate is a bit disappointing when traveling from location to location. Enemies will still clip through walls and objects. They also push the blood splatter a little more, as any and every bullet seems to trigger a red packet to explode. The Wii Remote movements will be a mystery to control if you've tried Umbrella Chronicles, as they remain the same. A new feature absent from the first one is your character's physical animation of reloading each distinct weapon from your arsenal. The first game was void of any animation, resulting in a word notification during reloading. While it doesn't provide much of a difference, it feels more distinct to acknowledge we are a character rather than a camera. You'll see a slew of weapons that were present from the previous game, including the trusty infinite ammo handgun, standard shotgun, machine gun, and more powerful weapons like the Magnum and the rocket launcher. Nothing extravagant or new here though, aside from the most notable, a crossbow famous from Code Veronica. Developers expressed their desire for a significant alteration to the game's camera movements, as the previous rendition suffered from a static on-rails ride from point A to point B. Capcom ramped up the movements 200%, attempting to deliver a much more realistic, exciting expedition through hordes of the undead. It is definitely a better, more involving approach to get things right. However, the overabundant shaky cam outcome feels absolutely forced, especially during instances when you are simply standing around.
You fought these things before?
Resident Evil: The Darkside Chronicles does provide some replay value, in case you were worried about that. Just like the original, shooting everything on screen is an absolute must if you want to locate the rarest items and gold. Gold is definitely valuable to you because you have the benefit of upgrading your weaponry between levels to give that extra boost of power, faster reload, magazine capacity, or stopping power for those encounters that get too close. It's not necessary to upgrade your entire arsenal, as the handgun seems to pack a deadly punch on all types of enemies. One thing that's absent that's very convenient in Umbrella Chronicles is the ability to use self-defense if you're caught by a zombie. In Darkside, if a zombie gets too close, you aren't given a second chance to fend off. Also, the convenience of throwing grenades is gone too. If hand grenades are desired, they must be manually set to a button on the Wii remote. In Umbrella Chronicles, health items like herbs couldn't be placed in your inventory, forcing you to use them on the fly when picked up, even when you are at full health. In Darkside, you have a nice inventory, stocking up on items for later use, an advantage over the original. First aids, however, still reprise their role when you lose all your health in order to continue the game. Once completing the Shattered Memories, you'll find the current mission that Leon and Jack are on isn't as long nor deep as the on-rails Resident Evil 2 or Code Veronica, but still provide a few cool moments that could be considered canon to the series.
Veronica virus?
Fans will point out right away that a lot of the events from the memories won't be consistent with the extravagant timeline of happenings in the Resident Evil dimension. The storyline in Darkside Chronicles, although fresh and welcoming, is a tad disorienting for its motivation behind fully replaying Resident Evil 2 and Veronica for just a few connections between the old and new material. If only Darkside Chronicles had more original content, it would be much more enticing than its predecessor. Fans of the series would agree that Umbrella Chronicles had a surplus of original content from playing as a side or special character, which gave a lot of insight into the storyline that was never discovered beforehand. In contrast, Darkside Chronicles has little to none after completing the main game.
This guy's begging to get his ass kicked.
You'll find that replaying these Shattered Memories with the addition of a new story won't give you as many hours as you'd like to think, as it can be accomplished in a mere weekend. Veterans of the series will like going back in time to play previous games, but will find it pointless to play through its entirety. For others who haven't finished the games and want to see all the important events, this is a convenient way. So, essentially, you will still get the benefit of picking up collectibles, money, and documents along the way, and there is even an achievement area for your progress. But if you're expecting tons of unlockables with hours at your fingertips, you may be disappointed in that respect. Darkside Chronicles is still fun and possesses some strengths that Umbrella Chronicles was known for, but it's a short and bittersweet ride that is essentially the dark side of its predecessor.